AITA for refusing to let my family back in after my sister's lie ruined my life. I am Ethan, 33 years old now, and this story is about how my sister, let's call her Chloe, completely destroyed my life with a lie and everything that happened afterward. But to understand, you first have to know how things were before everything fell apart. Growing up, Chloe and I were super close, probably more than most siblings. Despite the 2-year age gap, we were almost like best friends. I know, it seems weird now, considering everything that happened, but back then it was just normal. I was never the school genius. I struggled with my grades and barely passed my classes, but I was really into electronics. Not computers or programming, no, taking things apart and putting them back together. I started with old remote controls or radios found at flea markets. By 16, I had a whole setup in my room, a soldering iron, a multimeter, and boxes full of circuits and wires. My parents found it weird, especially because I spent hours in there. Door locked. Yeah, that's going to become important later. But Chloe, she understood. She was 14 when I really started diving into it, and she would hang out in my room for hours watching me work. She asked all kinds of questions. What was this part for? Why did I connect this wire to that one? That kind of stuff. Sometimes, she helped me organize my parts or held something steady while I soldered. It was our thing. Our parents clearly had a favorite child. That said, Chloe was the perfect kid. Straight A's, captain of the cheer squad, student government. The complete package. Me, I barely passed my subjects and was either in my room tinkering or at the skate park. But Chloe always supported me. Once, in my junior year, I got caught with a cigarette behind the bleachers. Instead of letting me get suspended, Chloe invented a whole story about how I was holding it for someone who had run away. She even cried in front of the principal, saying I was trying to get my life back on track and that a suspension would ruin everything. The principal bought it. She also helped me with homework. She explained stuff better than my teachers, breaking down math problems in a way that actually made sense to me. She was probably the only reason I graduated, honestly. And I looked out for her too. As a protective big brother, I was maybe a little too present. Looking back, any guy who wanted to ask her to prom had to get my approval first. I wasn't trying to be a jerk, just trying to protect her from creeps. Even when I hung out with the wrong crowd or came home late, Chloe never judged me. She covered for me with our parents, inventing excuses when I missed curfew. Once, I came home at 3 a.m., and she was waiting for me on the front porch swing, just to make sure I got home in one piece. In hindsight, maybe we were too close. Maybe that is why people believed what she said later so easily. But at the time, it was normal. She was my sister, my best friend, the only one who really understood me. Our parents tried to get me interested in normal activities. They signed me up for sports teams or clubs, but I always went back to my electronic circuits. They thought I was wasting my time, but Chloe defended me. He's good at it, she would say. Let him do what he loves. It is this Chloe that I sometimes try to remember. The little sister who believed in me when no one else did. The one who brought me snacks while I tinkered, who defended me against our parents. The one who trusted me enough to come talk to me about her problems. Damn, this is harder to write than I thought. When everything started to collapse, I was 18, just graduated. Chloe was 16, and she was starting to attract the attention of guys at her high school. As a protective big brother, I did what any big brother would do. I scared them a little. Not by being physical, just by making it clear that I was watching. There was this one guy, Jake, who was particularly persistent, a senior with a shiny new Mustang his parents bought him. The rich kid cliché. I caught him trying to convince Chloe to skip class with him. Maybe I shouldn't have pinned him against his locker, but seriously, an 18-year-old guy trying to get a 16-year-old girl to skip school. What brother wouldn't be furious? That is where the rumors started. First whispers, people in Chloe's grade saying it was weird that I was so protective. Then it got worse. Someone started the idea that if I didn't want other boys approaching her, it was because I wanted her for myself. Nasty stuff. I remember exactly when I understood that something was really wrong. A Tuesday after school, Chloe usually came into my room to hang out while I tinkered, but that time, she went straight to her room. When I knocked to see if she was okay, she told me to get lost. Later, I found her crying in the kitchen. When I tried to hug her, like I did every time she was sad, she flinched. She actually pulled away from me. That had never happened. She mumbled that she was tired and went back to her room. The following days were weird. She didn't come to see me anymore, barely spoke to me. I told myself it was a teenage phase. I should have understood. Then one morning, I was repairing an old stereo when I heard a knock on the door. Not a small knock, a heavy, official knock that immediately gives you a knot in your stomach. 2 police officers and a woman in a suit were there when my father opened the door. They asked to speak with him in private first. I could hear them talking in the kitchen without making out the words. Then my father called my name. I will never forget his look, as if he were looking at a stranger. The woman introduced herself. She was from Child Protective Services. She had to ask me some questions about my relationship with Chloe. Apparently, Chloe had spoken to her guidance counselor and had said that I was having inappropriate contact with her. Even today, it is difficult to write. She had said that was why I always stayed in my room. Door locked. That she came in because I forced her to. I'll let you guess the rest. She had said that I threatened her if she spoke, that my jealousy toward boys her age was because I couldn't stand her being interested in someone else, her growing up, her having a normal life, that I was losing control. She had even said that my electronic equipment, the cables, the zip ties, the tools, were used for something else. My father didn't even ask questions, not one. He nodded his head as if suddenly everything made sense. The hours in my room, the lock, my overprotectiveness. In his mind, it fit perfectly into something sick. I tried to explain. I showed them my projects, the half-repaired stereo on my desk, the boxes of circuits. I talked about the hours Chloe spent watching and helping, but they had already decided I was guilty. The CPS woman asked leading questions. Did you make her feel special? Did you tell her she was different from other girls? Everything I said seemed to make things worse. When they brought up Jake, Chloe had twisted everything. She had said I was jealous, that I couldn't stand her being interested in boys at her high school, that I wanted to keep control over her. The worst part, she had a whole narrative prepared about how I had become more aggressive because she was pulling away from me, how I had told her she was betraying me by talking to other boys. None of that was true, but the way she told it, even I almost believed it. And then, I snapped right there in front of everyone. Chloe, what the hell is this? My voice broke, not from anger, but from pure shock. She refused to look at me. Chloe, look at me. She kept her eyes glued to the floor, arms wrapped tight around herself, as if she were a fragile little thing that needed protection. This little act only made me angrier. You know it's not true, you know it. I turned to our father, desperate. Dad, please, you know me. I would never. Stop. His voice was low, steady, but his face, I had never seen him look at me like that. Not disappointed, not angry, just done. You don't even want to listen to me? I took a step forward and he raised his hand as if I were a threat. Chloe flinched. She flinched. That is the moment I understood. You can't seriously believe this. My voice weakened. All the rage evaporated at once. I looked at Chloe again. Really looked. She still wouldn't meet my eyes. Why are you doing this? She finally looked up. She was going to say something, maybe even take it all back. But she looked at Dad, the CPS woman, the cops in our living room, and that is when she dove back into her lie. Her eyes filled with tears. She took a deep, shaky breath and whispered, I'm sorry. And there, I understood. She wouldn't go back because it was too late, because she had gone too far, because she was afraid of the consequences. I laughed. Yes, I really laughed. Wow, you're really going to do this? You're really going to put me through this? Chloe wrapped her arms even tighter around herself. I couldn't keep this to myself anymore. Dad clenched his jaw. Get your things, we're going to the station. And that was it. No trial, no proof, no real questions. Just my father driving me to the police station in silence, as if I were already guilty. As if I were a stranger, as if I had never been his son. In the car, all I thought about was how they had made everything fit their version. The lonely big brother, the weird hobby with tools and cables, the excessive protection, the once close relationship that had gone wrong. They saw exactly what they wanted to see. The interrogation room looked like what you see in movies. They let me stew for hours before 2 detectives arrived. Detective Miller played the good cop. We just want to understand what happened, Ethan. Help us help you. The female detective, Detective Rossi, took notes and shot me looks like I was trash. Miller started with my hobby, in a falsely interested tone. Tell me about the stuff you build. I explained the old stereos, the small circuits, the repairs. And Chloe helped. Yes. She organized the parts, held stuff while I soldered. She liked to learn. Rossi cut in. So you'd get her alone in your room, door locked, to handle your equipment. And there, I understood how they were twisting everything. Every normal detail became suspect. They wouldn't let go of the locked door. I explained that I had expensive equipment, that Dad would take my tools without putting them back. Or maybe, said Miller, his voice harder, you locked it for other reasons. They had an entire file claiming that I had started having inappropriate contact with her when she was 12, right when she got interested in my projects. How I allegedly used electronics to isolate her, to make her feel special. That's insane, I said. She's my sister. I was teaching her because she was interested. The detective leaned toward me. Interested, or afraid of what would happen if she wasn't. Then they talked about Jake. In their version, I was a jealous predator. They had statements from students saying I was possessive. Miller took out photos taken in my room that morning. Close-ups of my cables, my zip ties, my tools. They had made my workshop look like a torture lab. Your father says you spent hours in here with Chloe. You want to tell us what really happened? I exploded. I started shouting that they were making everything perverted. Bad idea. Miller nodded as if he had just gotten a confirmation. Classic defensive reaction, he said to his colleague. They brought up my bad grades, my lack of friends, my hours spent alone. They constructed a whole profile, an isolated, unstable, obsessed young man. They weren't investigating. They were building a monster, and the more I denied, the more guilty I looked. My lawyer, if you can call her that, did almost nothing. We have to consider a deal, she told me, as if it were the only option. If this goes to trial, you risk 20 years. 20 years. After hours, Miller laid it out. We have enough to charge you. Serious charges. But if you cooperate, if you admit to it and show remorse, we can help you. I didn't do anything. I repeated for the 100th time. Then explain why Chloe would invent all of this. I couldn't, because it made no sense. My sister, the one I had protected, the one who made sure I got home alive. Why would she do this? The rest is a blur. Meetings with lawyers. My parents had hired a top-tier lawyer for Chloe. Me. I was told to figure it out. I was given a young public defender who already thought I was guilty. Juries believe victims, she told me. Chloe is young, emotional, convincing. She told me about the risk. A trial equals up to 20 years. A deal equals 5 years of probation and lifetime registration on the sex offender registry. No prison. If you go to trial and you lose, you'll have no chance left. Even my parents weren't on my side. Dad just told me, don't put your sister through a trial. Take the deal. But I'm innocent, I insisted. They all say that, replied my lawyer without looking up. They have the behavioral changes, they have her testimony. They have witnesses saying you were possessive. No jury will believe you over a traumatized kid. Dad came to see me one last time before I made the decision. I thought he was finally going to understand, but he said, admit what you did. Don't make your sister live through a trial. Dad, please, you know me. You know that I thought I knew you. Apparently not. That was the last real conversation I had with my father. 2 days later, I accepted. I pleaded no contest to a lesser charge of sexual assault on a minor. 5 years of probation. Lifetime registration. Some will wonder why someone pleads guilty when they're innocent. But the truth is, they break you. They take every detail of your life and turn it until you don't even know what is normal anymore. And when everyone, family, police, your own lawyer, believes you're guilty, you end up believing that fighting is useless. Being on the registry destroys your life in a way you can't even imagine. Everyone talks about the big consequences. You can't live near schools, you can't have certain jobs. But it is the little things that really destroy you. The first apartment I tried to rent, the landlady was ready to have me sign the lease, then she ran the background check. I still remember her face when she saw what came up. She literally backed away as if I was going to attack her right there in her office. I'm sorry, she said. I have grandchildren who come to visit. I hope you understand. That became my life. People saying, I'm sorry, while treating me like a monster. And finding a job. A nightmare. Most employers didn't even look at my application after seeing the box I had to check. The rare interviews I got almost always ended the same. We'll call you back. They never called back. I ended up meeting a guy, Mike, who managed a small factory. He hired people no one wanted, ex-cons, addicts trying to recover, guys like me. The pay was garbage and the work was exhausting. but at least it was something. Listen, Mike told me on the first day, I don't care what you did. You show up and you do your job. That's all I ask. I worked there for almost 2 years. Then someone discovered my past and started stirring things up, telling others they shouldn't have to work with someone like me, that I was dangerous. Mike tried to defend me, but after a while, he had to let me go. I can't risk losing my whole team for you, he said. At least he gave me a decent severance. I lost my apartment shortly after. I ended up living in my car for a while. My Planet Fitness membership became my best friend. $10 a month to be able to shower and use a clean bathroom. I parked in Walmart parking lots that were open 24/7 to sleep. Security left you alone as long as you didn't cause trouble. The worst wasn't even the practical aspects. It was seeing life go on without me. Through mutual friends on Facebook, I saw Chloe graduate high school with honors, go to college on a full scholarship, and meet this rich guy, Ryan, at a campus event. Meanwhile, I was eating cold canned ravioli in my car, trying to figure out where I could park without the cops showing up. I made the mistake of trying to date someone once. I met a girl, Sarah, at one of my jobs. She was nice, didn't ask too many questions about my past. We went out a few times, and it was going well. Then she asked why I always had to check the address of places we went. I decided to be honest. I told her about the registration requirement, the fact that I had to be careful where I went. I tried to explain that I was innocent, that it was a false accusation. She said she needed time to think. The next day, her brother and 2 of his buddies showed up at my workplace. I had to quit that job too. After that, I started hanging out in a small neighborhood library. The librarian more or less understood my situation, but never said anything. She just left books on the return card, books she thought I would like, lots of technical manuals, books on electronics. She must have noticed what I usually read. One day, she caught me watching online courses. She sat next to me and helped me find free courses I could take. Education is a right for everyone, she said. The only person in years to treat me like a human being. I started learning about cryptocurrencies thanks to those courses. I figured it was a field where I could work without anyone checking my record. And it turned out I had a certain talent for understanding the technical side. I made a little money here and there trading. But you know what really destroyed me? Reading the comments under Chloe's posts on social media. All those people saying how brave she was, that it was amazing to see her overcome her trauma to succeed like that. She even wrote an article for her college newspaper about being a survivor. People called her an inspiration while I was barely surviving. Ironic, isn't it? I often thought about trying to clear my name. But who would believe me? Chloe was the perfect, brilliant, and respectable student. I was just a shady guy living in his car. The system doesn't care about people like me. I spent most of my 20s like that, going from job to job, town to town, never staying long enough for people to discover my past, never making friends. Because what is the point? They all leave when they learn the truth. Some nights lying in the back seat, I looked at old family photos on my phone, photos of me and Chloe as kids, trying to understand where everything had gone wrong, what I could have done differently. That is what being on the list is. It doesn't just take away your freedom, it takes away your past, your future, your entire identity. You are no longer a person, you become a label. And then everything shifted at once. It was just a normal Tuesday. I was at my factory job, a better one than the last, when I received an email from a private investigator. I almost deleted it, thinking it was spam, but something pushed me to read it. The investigator said he had been hired by Chloe's husband, Ryan, to look into her past. Apparently, she was behaving strangely lately, and Ryan had started digging. The detective had found inconsistencies in her story about me and wanted to talk. I ignored him at first. I had had enough of people messing with my life. But he sent another email with proof that he was serious. Court documents, files, pieces of evidence I had never seen. We met at a diner off the highway. The detective, let's call him Frank, had a huge binder of documents. Your sister's story is falling apart, he said, spreading papers on the table. I've been doing this job for 30 years. I've rarely seen someone sabotage their own lie this badly. It turns out Chloe had been careless, really careless. The timeline she gave about what was supposed to have happened didn't match school records or witness statements from her friends. She changed her version every time she told the story. But what completely floored me was this. You remember Jake, the senior who was hitting on her? Actually, he wasn't just some guy circling her. Chloe was secretly dating him, and it was serious. They had been caught in his car in a situation she was clearly not supposed to be in. She was convinced I was going to tell our parents everything. Maybe because she knew I had always been protective, or maybe just out of pure panic. In any case, she needed a diversion. Something big enough, shocking enough so that no one would think about Jake anymore. So, she invented the accusations, knowing that once those words were spoken, nothing else would matter. Frank had text messages between Chloe and her friends from back then, screenshots she thought were deleted. In them, she literally planned everything. She talked about needing a nuclear option to silence me. Looks like she didn't think it would go this far, said Frank. Reading these messages, you get the impression she believed they were just going to send you to live with a relative or something. When your father blew everything up, she was too scared to back down. I sat there reading all this proof, finally seeing in black and white what I had always known. Frank continued talking. Ryan hired me because she's been acting erratically. She drinks too much, gets paranoid. He found her one night in tears in front of old family photos. When he asked who you were, she completely shut down. That's when he called me. Then Frank pulled out a last document. A confession signed by Chloe. Ryan had confronted her with all the evidence, and she had cracked. She had confessed everything. You have to understand something, said Frank. This won't fix everything at once. The justice system doesn't like admitting it made a mistake. But it's a start. He left me copies of everything. I spent the whole night rereading it all. The texts where she plotted her move, the confession where she finally acknowledged the truth, and even posts she had made on a forum asking how to make abuse accusations more credible. The next day, I called a lawyer. A real one this time. Not an overwhelmed public defender who already thought I was guilty. We filed a petition for post-conviction relief based on new evidence. My lawyer said Chloe's confession, combined with the inconsistencies Frank had discovered, was solid enough to get my conviction overturned and get me off the registry. It took months of hearings, but finally, a judge ruled in my favor. My record was expunged. I should have felt relief. I should have felt something. But all I thought about was how much time it had taken and everything I had lost in the meantime. A week later, an envelope arrived in my mailbox. No return address, but I already knew who it was from before opening it. My parents, the first contact in 10 years. My hands were shaking as I opened it. Not with excitement, just pure disbelief. Inside, there was a letter written in my father's stiff, impersonal handwriting. He wanted to see me. Chloe had finally confessed. Well, partially. She had invented a watered-down version, describing herself as a poor, scared little girl who had made a terrible mistake. No mention of the calculated lies, no mention of the years of suffering she had inflicted on me. But apparently, it was enough for them to finally believe in my innocence. Tucked in the envelope was a check for $50,000, an amount they must have thought was generous, as if that could erase a decade where I had been treated like a monster. As if that could buy back my stolen years, my dignity, my life. I held it against the light for a second, then I laughed. Nothing had changed. They still thought problems were solved with a price. Money wasn't what I needed. I needed the truth to be spoken, and I needed to hear it from someone else's mouth. So I took the number Frank had given me, and I called. My hands were shaking when I finally dialed. He picked up after a few rings, his voice suspicious. Ryan, this is Ethan. A long silence. Then cautiously, Ethan who? I let the sting take effect before answering. Chloe's brother. Silence. Then a little, joyless laugh. That's funny, because Chloe never mentioned having a brother. She never mentioned having a family, actually. I swallowed the explosion of anger that was rising. Yeah, that tracks. Can't let the skeletons out of the closet, huh? Ryan exhaled sharply. I knew she was hiding things, but I've been married to this woman for years. I have a child with her, and I didn't even know she had a brother. Not one she hasn't already destroyed, I said calmly. Another silence. Then, this is unbelievable. His voice was tense, like someone realizing how much he has been manipulated. Then he sighed, and when he spoke again his voice was firm, definitive. I'm filing for divorce. I didn't say anything at first, just let the weight of those words float between us. Then I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Good decision. You deserve better. I hung up. Nothing more needed to be said, but as I put down my phone, a strange feeling of relief washed over me. Afterward, I saw her social media accounts go dark, one by one. But not before she posted a long diatribe, not about how she had misinterpreted things as a teenager. She was still presenting herself as the victim, the poor confused girl who had made a mistake and who now bravely told the truth. Her perfect life collapsed right after. Ryan filed for divorce. The school where she worked, yes, she had become a teacher, imagine that, asked for her resignation. Apparently, they don't like having teachers who admit to making false abuse accusations. I learned later that Ryan had obtained sole custody of their son. He had used Chloe's confession to prove she was unstable. She tried to fight, but Frank's investigation had uncovered other lies too. Many others. The truth is, she had lied about everything for years, not just about me. She invented stories about other people too. She had this pattern, accusing guys as soon as something didn't go her way. Some people asked why she had finally confessed. According to Frank, my parents had started noticing things. Chloe had been acting strangely for months, disappearing for hours, having sudden outbursts over nothing, drinking too much at family gatherings. But the real turning point happened when she made a mistake. During an argument with my mother, she let something slip, something like, "Ethan wouldn't have suffered so much if Dad hadn't overreacted like that." My mother froze. She pushed her to explain. Chloe tried to backpedal, but it was too late. The doubt was planted. My father, true to form, started snooping. He contacted people from Chloe's past, even old high school friends. And the cracks began to appear. By the time Ryan hired Frank, Chloe was already falling apart, trying to patch up a lie that was leaking from every seam. So, when Ryan confronted her with the evidence, the texts, the inconsistencies, the digital trail she thought was deleted, she cracked. And that is when my phone rang. It was my mother. Her voice was trembling, as if she had been crying for hours. "Ethan, please, we have to talk." I almost hung up, but something in her tone held me back. She started rambling about Chloe, about how she had finally told her version, that she had made mistakes, that she was young, scared, confused. "She isn't the same anymore," insisted my mother. "She's broken, Ethan. She cries every day. She knows she ruined your life, and she can barely stand it." Then they dared to ask, "Can't you forgive her?" That made my blood boil. Forgive? As if she had scratched my car, as if she had stolen money from me, as if she hadn't destroyed my entire life, left me in ruins while she played the victim for years. "You don't understand," continued my mother. "She's suffering too now." It was at that moment that I decided to see them. Not to make peace, not to pick up the pieces of a broken family. I wanted them to know exactly what they had done to me. "Okay," I said. "Let's meet." But I already knew how it was going to end. We met at a restaurant halfway between our towns. My mother started crying as soon as she saw me. My father looked old, broken. When your golden child turns out to be a walking lie, it leaves a mark. My mother tried to hug me. I stepped back. "Let's just sit down," I said. They had a whole speech prepared about how sorry they were, about how they should have believed me, about how they wanted to rebuild our family. My father even took out his checkbook, as if throwing money at the problem could fix everything. "Put that away," I told him. "I didn't come for your money." My mother kept repeating that they just wanted to protect Chloe, that they had done what they thought was right. More excuses, always excuses. I let them speak until they were finished. Then I took out the file Frank had given me. I read Chloe's texts out loud. The ones where she planned everything. I watched their faces as they understood just how much their perfect daughter had manipulated them. She was scared. My mother tried to say, "She was just a child." "I was barely an adult," I replied. Where was my protection? Where was my benefit of the doubt? My father tried his turn. "Son, we know we messed up. We want to fix this." "Fix this?" I laughed. "Fix this? Can you give me back my years, erase my registration, give me back my jobs, the humiliations?" They ran out of excuses. So, I told them everything. Living in my car, showering at Planet Fitness, eating cold food because I didn't have a kitchen. I even showed them the scars on my wrist from a time when I was at my lowest. My mother had to go to the restaurant bathroom to be sick. For the first time in years, my parents had to face the raw, ugly truth. That they had thrown away their own son as if I were nothing. That they had sacrificed my life without hesitation. That their model child was a fraud. I watched them collapse in silence, their world crumbling in real time. "You are the ones who did this," I said, my voice steady. "You let it happen." My father looked like he wanted to answer, wanted to defend himself, but for once, he didn't. He just sat there staring at the table, jaw clenched. My mother tried again. Ethan, we were just trying to protect her. We thought we were doing what was right. I leaned back in my chair, letting out a long breath. You know what's the worst part? I understand. I really do. If I had been a monster, you would have done what decent parents are supposed to do. But you never gave me a chance. Not once. You decided I was guilty because it was simpler than questioning Chloe, and you left me to rot for it. Tears were streaming down my mother's face. We were wrong, she whispered. We were so wrong. I let her sit with those words because yes, they were wrong, much more than wrong. But no apology could erase what I had lost. 10 years of my life where I wasn't a person, just a label. My mother reached out to me, her fingers trembling. Please, Ethan, we can't change the past, but we are still your parents. Can we try to fix things? I pulled my hand away before she could touch me. Fix, I sneered. Tell me, Mom, how do you fix 10 years? She opened her mouth, but no words came out. My father finally spoke. You have every reason to resent us. His voice was hoarse, aged. But we are still your family. I shook my head. No, you ceased to be my family the day you decided I wasn't worth fighting for. A heavy silence fell on the table. They expected anger, maybe screaming, but I was beyond all that. I didn't need to yell. They were drowning in their own guilt. Then my mother played her last card. Chloe is suffering too, Ethan. I stared at her. Of course she was going to say that. She lost everything, she continued. Her marriage, her career, her friends. She deserved it. I cut in, my voice icy. My mother recoiled as if I had slapped her. She made a choice. I continued, looking at both of them. She lied, and I paid the price. Then I turned my gaze to my father, who flinched. But you also made a choice. You believed her without hesitation. You let me leave with them without a second of doubt. My father closed his eyes for a moment, as if he could block out the truth. My mother's voice was nothing more than a breath. She isn't the same anymore. I let out a dry laugh. Me neither. And that was the real tragedy. The boy they had known, the one who spent hours repairing radios in his room, the one who would have given his life for his little sister, he had disappeared. They had buried him 10 years ago by letting me leave with the cops. I grabbed the check my father had put on the table earlier. $50,000. A figure they had surely invented, thinking money could fix everything. I looked at it for a second, then I tore it in half. I don't need your money, I said. I don't need anything from you. My mother collapsed into sobs. My father said nothing. He just sat there, looking like a man realizing he had just lost something he would never get back. I stood up. You made your choice, I said calmly. Now you get to live with it. I walked out without looking back. I felt nothing leaving that restaurant. No sense of victory, no liberation, just nothing. And maybe that was the real lesson. A few weeks later, I received a letter. No sender, but I already knew. It was from Chloe. I stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. Inside, a very short letter. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. That was all. No excuse, no explanation, just that. I held it for a moment in my hands, then I put it down. I never replied. And yes, life didn't become perfect all of a sudden after that. The damage was done. I will always carry the scars of those 10 years. But I was finally free, really free. With my record cleared, I could finally live without the weight of my past. I moved to a new city. I started over from scratch. I launched my electronics repair business, little by little, and I never looked back. My parents, all of that, they had become the ghosts of a life I had left behind. Maybe one day, I will think back on it, and I will feel something. But for now, I am finally living my life on my own terms, and that is enough. Comment. Thank you for staying with this story and sharing this powerful journey. It highlights that sometimes the strongest choice is not forgiveness or reconciliation, but choosing your own peace. Setting firm boundaries is not an act of cruelty. It is an act of self-preservation. Your worth is never defined by the labels or judgments others place on you. True healing begins when we reclaim our narrative and decide what we want our future to look like. Everyone is ultimately responsible for their own choices and the consequences that follow. We also saw how a single act of kindness from a stranger can become a lifeline in the darkest times. Let's all try to be that person for someone else, offering support without judgment. Remember to be kind to yourselves and to protect your well-being above all. Your journey is your own, and you have the right to walk it in peace. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.